You were never meant to stay buried. The soil was only preparing you for what you were always meant to become. There is something unbearable about feeling unseen, about standing in a room full of people and still feeling like a ghost, about speaking words that fall into empty air, about offering your heart and watching it get handed back to you like something unwanted. You know that ache, the kind that sits in your chest at 3 in the morning, the kind that makes you wonder if you matter at all, if anyone would notice if you disappeared, if the world would spin just the same without you in it. And maybe you've learned to smile through it, to nod when people ask if you're okay, to carry your pain like a secret you're ashamed of, to pretend that the silence doesn't hollow you out, that the rejection doesn't replay in your mind like a song you can't stop hearing, that being left behind doesn't make you question everything you thought you were. There are wounds that don't show on skin, wounds carved by words never spoken, by love withheld, by promises broken, by the ones who were supposed to stay but walked away, by the families that should have been shelter but became storms, by the friends who became strangers, by the dreams you had to bury because no one believed in them but you. And somewhere along the way, you started believing what the silence told you, that you were too much or not enough, that your voice was too loud or too quiet, that your presence was inconvenient, that your pain was a burden, that your joy was inappropriate, that you should shrink, apologize, disappear just a little bit more each day until you barely recognize yourself in the mirror. You learned to make yourself smaller, to dim your light so others wouldn't feel outshone, to swallow your truth so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable, to carry everyone else's expectations while abandoning your own needs, to be the strong one, the dependable one, the one who never breaks, until breaking becomes the only thing you know how to do in private. Heartbreak teaches you things no classroom ever could. It shows you that love doesn't always mean safety, that family doesn't always mean home, that being good doesn't guarantee being chosen, that you can do everything right and still end up alone, that you can pour yourself into people who will never pour back, that you can stand in your truth and still be called a liar. And the shame of it, the deep burning shame of feeling abandoned, of not being enough to make someone stay, of giving your best and watching it be treated like it was nothing, of believing you were special only to discover you were replaceable, of thinking you mattered only to learn you were forgotten the moment you left the room. There is a particular loneliness that comes from being misunderstood, from trying to explain your pain and being told you're too sensitive, from reaching for help and being told to be stronger, from showing your scars and being asked why you haven't healed yet, from carrying generational weight that no one wants to acknowledge, from breaking under pressure that everyone pretends doesn't exist. You become an expert at hiding, at performing wellness while drowning inside, at saying you're fine when fine is the furthest thing from what you are, at laughing on cue, at showing up even when showing up costs you everything, at being present for everyone except yourself. And maybe you've been that person who sits in the dark wondering why it's so hard just to exist, why everything feels heavy, why joy seems like something that happens to other people, why you can't remember the last time you felt light, free, unafraid, why peace feels like a language you used to speak but have somehow forgotten. But here is what they don't tell you when you're buried in the dark. Here is what the soil knows that you have forgotten. That burial is not the end. That being covered doesn't mean being destroyed. That pressure is sometimes just preparation. That the darkest place is often where the strongest things begin to grow. Think of the seed, small, vulnerable, alone in the earth. If you could hear its thoughts, you might hear fear, doubt, the belief that this darkness will last forever, that being buried means being finished. But the seed doesn't know that it carries an entire forest inside its small shell, that what feels like death is actually the beginning of life, that the very pressure threatening to crush it is teaching it how to push through concrete, how to reach for light it cannot yet see, how to become something far greater than it was, You are that seed, and everything that tried to bury you, every word that cut you down, every hand that pushed you under, every betrayal that left you gasping, every loss that broke you open, every moment you thought would end you, they were not destroying you. They were planting you, positioning you, preparing you for a rising they could never imagine. The bird doesn't sing because the cage is beautiful. It sings because song is its nature, because melody lives in its bones, because even bars cannot silence what is essential. And maybe you have been caged by circumstances you didn't choose, by people who needed you small, by systems designed to break you, by expectations that suffocated your becoming. But the cage doesn't define the song. It never could. Your voice is not conditional on perfect conditions. Your worth is not determined by who recognizes it. Your light is not dimmed by who refuses to see it. There is strength in surviving what should have destroyed you, in standing after being knocked down so many times you lost count, in breathing through grief that felt like drowning, in choosing softness after the world taught you cruelty, in offering grace when you were given judgment, in speaking truth when lies were easier, in loving yourself when everyone else walked away. Your scars are not evidence of your weakness. They are proof of your endurance. Every mark tells a story of a battle you survived, of a night you made it through, of a moment you didn't give up even when giving up seemed reasonable. They are maps of your resilience, testimony to your strength, badges of honor for every time you chose to keep going when stopping would have been so much simpler. Let me tell you about a woman I knew. She spent 30 years making herself quiet, folding herself into corners, speaking in whispers, laughing softly, taking up as little space as possible. She believed that smallness was safety, that invisibility was survival, that if she could just be less, she would finally be enough. She raised children who learned to speak boldly because she never could. She worked jobs where men half as qualified earned twice as much. She sat in rooms where her ideas were ignored until a man repeated them and received applause. She loved a man who treated her presence like an inconvenience and her absence like a relief. And she told herself this was just how life was, that her feelings were too big, that her needs were too much, that she should be grateful for whatever crumbs of affection came her way. One day, sitting in her car in a parking lot, something inside her broke. Not the breaking that destroys, the breaking that liberates. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. And in that moment, she made a decision, not a loud one, not a dramatic one, a quiet choosing. She decided she would no longer participate in her own erasure. She would no longer shrink to make others comfortable. She would no longer apologize for existing. She would no longer treat her voice like a disturbance. It didn't happen overnight. There was no sudden transformation, no movie montage, just small moments of choosing differently, speaking up in a meeting, saying no without explanation, leaving a conversation that diminished her, asking for what she needed, setting a boundary, walking away from what no longer served her. Each choice was terrifying, each one felt impossible, and each one was a form of resurrection. The people around her didn't celebrate her awakening. They called her difficult, angry, changed. They mourned the version of her that never challenged them, that absorbed their disrespect, that carried their emotional weight, that made their comfort her responsibility. And she grieved too, not for who she was becoming, but for all the years she spent believing she had to be less than she was. Think of the tree shaped by storms, its trunk bent but not broken, its roots deeper because the wind taught it to hold on, its branches stronger because they learned to flex instead of snap. You look at that tree and you see beauty, character, endurance. You don't see weakness. You see evidence of survival, proof that what tried to break it only made it more magnificent. You are that tree. Every storm you weathered, every wind that threatened to uproot you, Every season that stripped you bare, every moment you thought you couldn't stand, they didn't weaken you. They deepened your roots. They taught you how to bend without breaking, how to lose everything and still remain, how to stand in your truth even when truth stands alone. There is a young girl I think of often. She grew up in a house where love came with conditions, where acceptance required perfection, where mistakes meant rejection, where her worth was measured by her performance, by her grades, her behavior, her ability to make the adults around her feel successful. She learned early that being herself was not enough, that love was something you earned through effort, through excellence, through the constant suppression of anything that might disappoint. She became an expert at reading rooms, at shape-shifting, at being whoever she needed to be to avoid abandonment. She developed 1,000 masks and forgot what her real face looked like. She achieved everything she was supposed to achieve, got the degrees, the career, the relationship, the life that looked perfect from the outside. But inside, she was hollow, a collection of other people's expectations wearing her name. One evening, alone in her expensive apartment, she had a panic attack so severe she thought she was dying. In the emergency room, the doctor told her there was nothing physically wrong, that her body was just expressing what her mind kept trying to ignore, that she was suffocating under the weight of a life that wasn't actually hers. Recovery meant excavation, digging through layers of performance to find the person buried underneath. It meant disappointing people who loved the version of her they created. It meant making choices that made no sense to anyone but her. It meant learning that being authentic sometimes means being alone, that integrity costs comfort, that freedom requires the courage to be misunderstood. She talks now about that panic attack like it was a gift, a violent mercy, her body's way of saying enough, of refusing to carry the lie any longer, of demanding that she choose herself even if it meant losing everything else. And she did lose things, relationships that couldn't survive her authenticity, opportunities that required her compliance, the approval of people who only valued her utility. But what she gained was herself, and that trade, painful as it was, saved her life. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. When was the last time you chose yourself without apologizing for it? When did you last honor your truth even when it disappointed others? When did you stand in your worth without waiting for permission? When did you stop performing and start being? If you're still listening, something inside you is remembering who you are. There is a self beneath the self you show the world, a voice underneath the voice you've learned to use, a knowing that exists before all the conditioning, before all the training in how to be acceptable, how to be loved, how to be chosen. That self knows things your performing self has forgotten. It knows your worth is not negotiable, that your value is not conditional, that your existence is not something you need to justify or earn. That voice, the true one, it never stopped speaking. You just learned to stop listening. You turned the volume down so low you could barely hear it. You buried it under everyone else's opinions, under society's expectations, under the weight of trying to be enough for people who would never be satisfied, under the fear of being too much, too loud, too sensitive, too intense, too different, too you. But it's still there, waiting, patient, persistent, like a river that finds its way around every obstacle, like light that seeps through every crack, like truth that eventually surfaces no matter how deep you bury it. And maybe that's what this moment is, this listening, this reading, this opening. Maybe it's that voice calling you back to yourself. Rising doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like getting out of bed when bed feels like the only safe place, like taking a shower when your body feels too heavy to move, like saying no when yes has always been your default, like asking for help when you've spent your whole life being the helper, like admitting you're not okay when everyone needs you to be fine. Rising is choosing to believe in your own story when everyone else has written you off. It's refusing to internalize other people's limitations. It's recognizing that their inability to see you is not evidence of your invisibility, that their failure to value you is not proof of your worthlessness, that their decision to walk away says everything about them and nothing about you. You survive the nights that tried to swallow you whole. You endure the losses that felt like endings. You rise from the ashes of every version of yourself that had to burn away. And the rising is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is quiet, steady, sure, like dawn, like spring, like anything that has ever grown from darkness into light. There comes a moment when you stop asking for permission to exist, when you stop apologizing for taking up space, when you stop explaining yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you, when you stop performing for an audience that will never applaud, when you stop shrinking to fit into places that were never meant to hold you. That moment feels like coming home to yourself, like remembering a language you thought you'd forgotten, like finding a part of yourself you didn't know was missing. It feels like relief, like freedom, like the first deep breath after years of shallow breathing, like stepping out of a cage you didn't realize you were in. And the beautiful thing about remembering yourself is that you also remember your power, not power over anyone else, not dominance, not control, but the power of being fully yourself, of standing in your truth without wavering, of honoring your needs without guilt, of protecting your peace without explanation, of choosing yourself without shame. You start to understand that the people who truly love you don't need you to be smaller. They celebrate your expansion. They encourage your growth. They make space for your becoming. They don't feel threatened by your light. They don't compete with your joy. They don't punish you for your strength. They see you, all of you, and they choose you anyway. And the ones who can't handle your wholeness, who need you diminished to feel comfortable, who require your brokenness to feel needed, who demand your silence to feel heard, they were never your people. Losing them is not loss. It's liberation. It's making room for relationships built on truth instead of performance, on authenticity instead of pretense, on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. Think about the roots that grow in darkness, unseen, unappreciated, unwitnessed. No one applauds the root. No one photographs it. No one writes poems about its beauty. But without the root, there is no tree. Without the foundation, there is no flourishing. Without the hidden work, there is no visible bloom. All those years you spent in the dark, working on yourself, healing yourself, holding yourself together when everything else was falling apart, building character that no one saw, developing strength that no one acknowledged, cultivating wisdom that no one celebrated. Those were your root years. And roots determine everything. They determine how deep you can stand, how tall you can grow, how much storm you can weather, how long you can endure. You are here because of roots you don't even remember growing, because of strength you built in moments no one witnessed, because of choices you made when quitting would have been easier, because of faith you held on to when hope seemed foolish, because of love you gave yourself when no one else would, because of worth you claimed when the world tried to convince you otherwise. There is something sacred about a person who has walked through fire and chosen not to become fire, who has known cruelty and remained kind, who has experienced betrayal and still trusts, who has survived abandonment and still loves, who has faced darkness and still carries light. That is not weakness. That is not naivety. That is strength of the rarest kind. That is wisdom earned through suffering. That is grace chosen in the face of every reason not to choose it. You don't owe anyone your brokenness. You don't owe them your trauma as entertainment, your pain as proof, your wounds as credentials. You don't need to stay stuck to validate what you survived. You don't need to remain small to make others feel big. You don't need to keep bleeding to show you were cut. Healing is your right. Joy is your birthright. Peace is your inheritance. Freedom is your destination. And anyone who needs you to stay wounded to feel comfortable around you is not someone who deserves access to your journey. Let yourself grow. Let yourself bloom. Let yourself take up space. Let yourself speak without second-guessing every word. Let yourself want without shame. Let yourself rest without guilt. Let yourself be seen without performing. Let yourself be loved without earning. Let yourself be human without apology. The world will try to convince you that your worth depends on your productivity, your beauty, your youth, your compliance, your usefulness, your ability to make others comfortable, your willingness to stay quiet, your capacity to absorb pain without complaint. The world lies. Your worth is inherent. It was there before you did anything. It remains when you do nothing. It exists independent of anyone's recognition. It is not something you earn. It is something you are. You are valuable because you breathe, because you exist, because there has never been and will never be another you, because your story matters, because your voice matters, because your presence makes a difference, even when you can't see it. There are people in this world who are alive because you were kind when they needed kindness, who kept going because you believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves, who found courage because you modeled it, who learned to love themselves because you showed them what that looks like, who chose differently because you chose first. Your impact is greater than you know. Your legacy is wider than you imagine. Your influence ripples in ways you will never fully see. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not meant to know the full measure of what we give. Maybe we're just meant to show up, to be present, to offer what we can, to speak truth, to extend grace, to choose love, to stand in integrity, to honor our worth, to protect our peace, to pursue our purpose, and trust that the rest takes care of itself. You were never meant to stay buried. That darkness you've been sitting in, it was never your destination. It was your preparation. The pressure that felt like it would crush you was actually teaching you how strong you are. The isolation that felt like abandonment was actually giving you time to find yourself. The pain that felt like punishment was actually breaking you open so something new could emerge. Every season of your life has been necessary, even the ones that nearly destroyed you. Even the ones you wish you could erase, even the ones that left scars you still carry. They taught you things you could never have learned in comfort. They revealed strength you didn't know you had. They prepared you for a purpose you're only beginning to understand. And now you're here, still standing, still breathing, still choosing, still believing, still hoping, still growing, still becoming, after everything that tried to stop you, after everyone who counted you out, after every reason you had to give up. You're still here, and that is not an accident. That is not luck. That is evidence of something unbreakable inside you, something that refuses to be defeated, something that knows you were made for more than survival. You were made to thrive, so let yourself emerge. Break through that soil that's been covering you. Push past the weight that's been pressing you down. Reach for the light you deserve to live in. You've been in the dark long enough. You've been underground long enough. You've been waiting long enough. This is your season. This is your time. This is your moment to bloom. And when you do, when you finally break through into the light, you'll understand all of it. Every painful moment, every lonely night, every tear you cried, every piece of yourself you thought you lost. It was all preparing you for this, for becoming, for rising, for standing in the fullness of who you were always meant to be. You are not buried. You are planted, and everything that tried to keep you down was actually positioning you to grow. So grow, unapologetically, courageously, beautifully, powerfully. The world needs what only you can offer. The world needs your voice, your story, your truth, your light. Don't keep it hidden any longer. Don't keep yourself small any longer. Don't wait for permission any longer. This is your time to rise. And when you do, you'll lift others with you. Your courage will give others permission. Your authenticity will create space for theirs. Your healing will inspire their journey. Your light will remind them of their own. You rising is not selfish. It's necessary. It's the most generous thing you can do, because a world full of people living in their truth, standing in their power, honoring their worth, that's how everything changes. So rise, not because it's easy, not because you have it all figured out, not because you're ready, but because you're worthy, because you matter, because your life has meaning, because your story isn't over, because the best chapters are still being written, because you deserve to see what you become when you finally stop holding yourself back. Rise like the sun that refuses to apologize for its light, like the flower that blooms despite the concrete, like the voice that speaks despite the fear, like the heart that loves despite the risk, like the soul that sings despite the cage. You were never meant to stay buried. You were always meant to grow. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs courage today. And if you want more words that remind you of your worth, subscribe, because your voice matters.